Hi everyone, I'm Dr. McFarland, a board-certified pediatric dentist. Today we're going to answer these questions. Should you throw away your toothbrush after being sick? And if so, when? Is it possible to disinfect your toothbrush? Can you actually reinfect yourself after an illness? And should you be sanitizing your toothbrush regularly? Is that something that people should be doing, even if you're not sick? We'll answer all of those and more. Let's get going. So should you throw away your toothbrush after being sick? And if so, when? So conventional wisdom and most dentists and doctors would say yes. After an illness, you should throw away your toothbrush and get a new one. You want to do so after major symptoms have resolved, which typically is 2 to 3 days. Regarding strep throat in particular, there is a small study out there that shows that strep bacteria may not really be growing on toothbrush heads, but it was really small. The evidence just wasn't powerful enough for me to shy away from that conventional wisdom and traditional practice of throwing away the toothbrush after being sick. So with strep, I still say get rid of it after symptoms have resolved. Basically, I do recommend discarding a toothbrush after any illness like a cold, the flu, strep, COVID, hand, foot, and mouth, or any other contagious illness via aerosols or droplets, and contact with mucosa, so the eyes, the nose, the mouth, like a stomach virus. And even for pink eye, you want to be sure you're at least cleaning that toothbrush handle. But why? Can you really reinfect yourself after having an illness just by using the same toothbrush? Okay, generally, no, you really can't. Your body has formed antibodies to a virus, but there are still 2 really good arguments for throwing away your toothbrush after an illness. First, it helps prevent spread of the infection to other members of your household who may not have gotten sick yet, and hopefully never will. And second, there are many different bacteria, fungi, and viruses that grow on toothbrushes. And after fighting off an illness, your body may be in a slightly weakened state, more prone to a new infection. So you could still get infected with something else that's looming or growing on your toothbrush. Throwing that old one away and getting a new one solves both of those worries. I also like to think of the germs as like little tiny army of soldiers, and your body is trying to fight them off. But if you keep introducing new soldiers, so the germs from the toothbrush, it could in theory take your body longer to overpower that army and defeat that infection. So in my mind, a new toothbrush helps you to get over that infection sooner. But I am no immunologist, so that may not be proper thinking, but that's the way I think of it. Now, before we get into the specifics of cleaning your toothbrush after an illness, should you really be sanitizing your toothbrush regularly, even when you're not sick? Yep. Toothbrushes build up germs like fungi and bacteria and viruses that, yes, are coming from our mouths, but they can continue to grow outside of our mouth on that brush, grow in number, and mature, which sometimes can make them a little yuckier. So you just want to reduce the amounts of those that are growing and maturing on your toothbrush by regularly sanitizing. I'd say at least once a week. So for routine daily sanitizing, that is when there's no active illness, before and after brushing, this is what I do. So first, wash your hands. Be sure your hands are clean with both soap and water. Before brushing, rinse off any dust or particles with warm water, which will soften the bristles. After brushing, you run the brush under cold water. This firms the bristles and is less likely to promote bacterial growth, while rubbing your thumb over the bristles for 15 seconds. This is helping to dislodge any extra food particles, plaque bits, and toothpaste. Then you pat it dry on a clean towel and you store it upright and allow it to air dry fully. You also want to be sure that you are routinely cleaning the brushing handle and then the toothbrush holder. You can use soap and water or just a wipe. You also want to make sure that every family member has their own toothpaste, or if you are sharing a tube, that you're using something like plastic spatula or a disposable utensil like a butter knife to dispense that toothpaste and then apply it to the toothbrush and washing that off afterward. You're trying to prevent cross-contamination between people. And then make sure you are not storing your toothbrush in a dark or damp place, which would promote mold growth and other germ growth. So you don't want to store it upside down in a cup where the water is dripping down and then it's dark in there. So no darkness, no closed space. You want it to air dry out in the open and in the light. Some people choose to actually use 2 different toothbrushes so that they can be sure it's fully air dried between uses. They'll use one in the morning and one at night, so that's an option too. And then another point about cross-contamination, be sure you are storing toothbrushes apart from each other, that they're not touching, ideally not even sharing the same toothbrush holder, so that you don't cross-contaminate and share germs. And then if you're storing your toothbrush in the bathroom by a toilet, make sure you are closing that toilet lid every time it flushes. Otherwise, there are aerosols created that can travel through the air and land on your toothbrush. They have done studies. Fecal bacteria, E. coli, have been found on toothbrushes by toilets, so reduce the number of those by closing that lid. Now, what do you do for more in-depth, like weekly sanitizing? That's just every day. What do I do? This is still what I would do for weekly, but not in the case of an illness. Again, you want to be sure you are cleaning the toothbrush handle and that storage place in addition to the toothbrush itself. You can use a disinfectant wipe for that purpose. And then generally, when we're talking about soaking, don't soak it overnight in whatever medium it is, because that could potentially damage the brush or the brush head. And then for all cleaning agents, make sure you are following the manufacturer's directions on how best to safely use them. So you're using proper ventilation, you're wearing protective equipment where it's needed. And then never, ever, ever mix disinfectants, especially bleach, vinegar, and hydrogen peroxide. Those in certain combinations can produce harmful gases. Some of them, even when stored, can become explosive, I think, mixed with baking soda. So you just don't want to mix things unless you are certain it is safe to mix them. And then don't save solutions that you create. You want to create fresh ones each time so that they're effective. And then again, sometimes saving and storing them, they can create gases and become dangerous. So you want to discard of them after you mix them and use them. So here are some options for that more in-depth sanitizing clean. First, you could soak the toothbrush bristles, so enough to cover the brush head, in antiseptic mouthwash or 70% like rubbing alcohol. I tend to use it for this purpose for about 1 to 2 minutes, or the amount of time indicated on the bottle for how you would use it in your mouth. And anytime you're using these, you want to be agitating and stirring periodically throughout the time, just to dislodge any food bits that might remain or bits of toothpaste. And then you're going to rinse it off with water and let it air dry like normal. Another great option is to use a denture cleaner or retainer cleaner tablet. Those tend to be 3 to 5 minutes long. So I'm going in order of like shortest to longest time to sanitize. And then same thing, you're agitating it a little bit, then you're rinsing and letting it air dry at the end. Another option is to soak it in diluted hydrogen peroxide, usually 1-to-1 of peroxide to water, so like half a cup and half a cup. That's usually about 5 minutes, and then you agitate, stir as it's soaking, and then rinse and let air dry. Another great option that's quite effective, if you look at a study that I linked down below, is 50-50 water and white vinegar. You're gonna let that soak for about 10 minutes, agitating, and then rinse and air dry. Another common option that you see is baking soda. So 2 teaspoons of baking soda in a cup of water. You let it soak in that for about 15 minutes and then agitate while it's going, and then rinse and air dry. But most importantly, it's not really the agent that you're using, although some are more effective than others against certain types of bacteria or viral infections. But generally, you're going to use what is most economical for you, what makes sense in terms of the amount of time required to clean, and something that's readily available and easy to access. Most likely something you already have on hand.
Now, we've talked about sanitizing the toothbrush kind of more on a routine basis when we're not sick. What should we do if we're actually sick? How do we handle the toothbrush then? We'll talk about that in the next video.